Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Puppet Masters and Castle Freaks, the internet's leading all things Charles Band podcast. I am one of your hosts, Jared Hornbeck, and I have to admit, sometimes culture confuses me, and I think I'm having a good time, but I'm really not. It's just confusing. Anyway, who is wandering the ins and outs of this apartment building with me today?
Jared, I have no idea what you're talking about, but I find you absolutely charming. This is Steve Guntley here in Austin, Texas, and this is the podcast about hidey holes, squished rats, and real-life knife fights. That's because this is the podcast about Crawlspace, a surprisingly important movie in the lore of Full Moon, and a means for us to talk about one of the actual craziest actors of all time. We have a lot to dig into with this guy. And luckily, we have some amazing returning guests to crawl into the crawl space with us. Who is here with us today, Jared?
Well, exactly. So when thinking of like crawl space, I was like, who will be lurking in a small confined space, just waiting to be, contacted and looking for a reason to come out? Who else but the hosts of Movie Dumpster, the amazing YouTube channel and podcast, who have been on our show before. We've been on theirs, but we got them back again because they were very popular. So they're back as return guests. It's Joe and it's Sean. What's up, guys?
What's up, man? How you guys doing?
Good to have you back. Thank you so much for being here and for diffusing all of the knife traps in your crawl space so that we could actually make this happen.
Yeah, I made sure.
Go ahead.
I made sure to remove all those traps as I exited the dumpster so that nobody could get hurt on the way back in.
I appreciate that. See, that's just good booby trap maintenance right there. That's just being a
you left
booby trap.
You left one though, and it sliced my sneaker in half.
Yeah, that's right.
I sat down to record and I almost got it up the old chute there. Yeah.
Yeah, right, exactly. I learned from Kevin McAllister, though. He was pretty, other than that gold tooth, he was pretty good about cleaning up after he was done.
I mean, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but is Dr. Gunther the logical end conclusion for Kevin McAllister? Is this where he's going to end up when he's in his like late 50s? Is this where we're going? He's trying to recapture his heyday.
Yeah, he's Jigsaw, yeah.
He's Jigsaw.
He's a proto Jigsaw. I think that's where he ends up. Now, Joe and Sean. Joe has been the person that I've been, in contact with more in setting things up. And last time, against his better judgment, Joe picked Demonic Toys 2. And this time, this was another Joe pick, I believe, for Crawl Space. We floated it around, and he said, "What's remaining? What's still out there?" And we came to Crawlspace. So I feel like this was purposeful. Like he felt like he had to sort of apologize to Sean.
Well, thank you, Joe.
You had a list of stuff, and you're like, "Hey, would you want to do any of these?" And I was like, I immediately picked Crawlspace because, it's a really great film by one of my favorite directors of Empire and Full Moon. So I was like, "Oh, this is gonna be a good one." Plus, Klaus Kinski. We can't.
Well, I also saw another name in there that I was like, "Well, no wonder." Under the effects department, I don't know if we're gonna get into that or not, but
who is it? Beekler.
Beekler's
here. Yeah. I thought you were referring to the cast member Tane, which is just a great. I think I'm pronouncing that right. I think it's just Tane with the accent. So I think it's supposed to be Tane.
So you would think that
Tani.
This is a weird way to start. We don't usually start by highlighting a cast member like this, but you would think, Steve, based on the way it's written, that would be how it's pronounced.
Yeah.
However, I have seen it in print other ways where it looks like it should be pronounced Tawny.
Okay.
And the reason is she's many things. First of all, she's the daughter of the actor Doug McClure.
MST3K favorite. Yeah.
Right. And the the bassist for Troy McClure on The Simpsons. She was married to a guy in the band Journey with at the time with the last name Kane. And she went by the name Tawny Kane with T-A like W-N-E-E Kane and Triangles is the name of her band, spelled the dumbest way possible. Like, try to imagine like the Psychotic Symphony spelling.
Okay.
But of the word triangles, there's a bunch of Y's and stuff in there. But I digress because I'm having a little fun with this. But She was the lead vocalist on 2 of the incredible songs that play in the tech noir bar in the Terminator.
She sure is.
Both the
That's
You've Got Me Burning in the Third Degree and Photo Play are both Tawny and the Triangles songs.
And I believe the songs that she performs in this are her as well, but the ADR in it is so hilariously off that it looks like she's like poorly lip syncing along to a completely different, unrelated artist. But I think it is actually her music that she's singing to.
Well, if you were unsure if she was a legitimate artist, boom, giant poster of Barbra Streisand up on the wall right behind her.
There you go.
Absolutely. I have the same one. Yeah.
You might even recognize her from Death Spa.
She is in Death Spa. She became kind of like a softcore actress in the 90s and in a lot of Shannon
I was just
Tweed
gonna
movies.
say that's how I know her. And then I was like, ooh, do I want to say that?
Now you did.
Well, hey, you're not the only one who was apparently fixated on her. The star of this movie, apparently, Mr. Klaus Kinski, was also a little infatuated with her, and at some points would only take any kind of direction from her. So I think that brings us that's a good time to get into Crawlspace. Let's bundle up and crawl on into the space there, because this movie was released May 21st, 1986. It's directed and written by David Schmoller, and it stars Klaus Kinski, Talia Balsam, Barbara Winery, Carol Francis, Tane, Sally Brown, and Kenneth Robert Shippey. This is, of course, the second David Schmoller film that he worked on with Charles Band. The first one was Tourist Trap, which was Schmoller's film debut, a fantastic, underrated little slasher film. And then, of course, the next one is going to be the original Puppet Master. So pretty important guy in the Full Moon legacy, even though he hasn't done as much as, say, like a Ted Nicolau or somebody like that. Now, Schmoller originally wrote this movie as a commentary about the Vietnam War. Now, his main character, his main antagonist that he'd created was a traumatized veteran who was kidnapping people and recreating a Vietnamese POW camp in his attic, so that was kind of the angle that he wanted to take with this. But Charlie Band reportedly didn't really like the Vietnam angle, and he said, like, look, can we just go with Nazis? And David Schmoller pushed back on that because he's like, there's a million Nazi movies. People are not really doing Vietnam movies yet. Platoon had not come out, so it was still something that was building up a little bit. But he changed his mind as soon as Charles Band told him that he could get Klaus Kinski for the lead. Now, Schmoller only knew him as this incredible German actor who works a lot with Werner Herzog, and who is just one of the greatest actors alive at this point. He did not know about Klaus Kinski's reputation and about how he works or doesn't work, shall we say. So let's take a Klaus Kinski minute here. He is a great of German theater and film. He has more than like 150 credits to his name. He's a very prolific actor. He's best known for his collaborations with Herzog on films like Nosferatu and Agira, The Wrath of God. He passed away in 1991 at the age of 65, so I think a lot of our younger listeners might not be familiar with this guy since he's kind of been gone their entire life. But, he was known as a great actor. He was also known for being severely mentally ill and prone to intense and often violent confrontations with his castmates and especially his directors. He hated directors a lot, and he liked to antagonize them as much as possible, and Crawlspace would prove to be no exception. There is no shortage of material out there if you want to find out just how crazy Klaus Kinski is. He was recorded in great detail being a very obstinate and sometimes violent and scary guy. Now, Herzog made a documentary about this in 1999 called My Best Fiend, which is a great film. Definitely check it out. And that's the movie where Herzog refers to him as one of the greatest actors of the century, but also a monster and a great pestilence. Imagine being such an asshole that Werner Herzog refers to you as a pestilence. Now, another significant documentary about Klaus Kinski was a short film made by David Schmoller about the film Crawlspace and his experience working on it. Now, the name of this short film, which is about 8 minutes long, is called Please Kill Mr. Kinski. And this was a very, very revealing watch. I definitely recommend watching it. This is a very quirky little short documentary. I think Schmoller frames himself in a really interesting way. Did you guys have a chance to all watch this?
I've seen it
Yep.
before, but I have not. I didn't watch it in preparation for the episode. No.
Okay,
But
yeah.
I know the gist of it. So.
It's on YouTube in horrible quality, but I did watch it, and it's like it's kind of funny how he frames everything, where he's kind of turning it to different cameras and everything. Meanwhile, also telling these horrible stories about Klaus.
It's very Jonathan Frakes,
I was just
Beyond
gonna say
Belief or
that.
whatever.
You just-
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's lots of multiple angles and like turning to the camera dramatically. but the point is coming through, and they do have a lot of footage of Kinski on the set. Now, here are some of the issues that they ran into with Klaus Kinski. Schmoller claims no fewer than 6 fist fights broke out because Kinski was being such an asshole.
Could you imagine?
Isn't that insane? Like it blows my mind that like this guy can get like who could be brilliant enough to justify 6 fist fights with cast and crew members on your set. And so that's one of the major downfalls. Kinski hated direction. He hated taking any kind of direction. And there's a funny refrain that Schmoller keeps using where he just says like, I would say action, and Kinski would put his hands in his head and he would scream and he would say, my whole life, directors are telling me action. I never want to hear that word again. So he changed it to Klaus. And then after a while, he freaked out and said, oh, everyone's always saying Klaus. I never want to hear this again. And eventually they settled on, I'm just going to start the camera. You go until you're done. You tell me when you are done, So at one point, they tried to fire Klaus Kinski from this movie, obviously, because he was a huge problem. The producer actually made a little bit of effort to get into this, and then he decided against it because he said that Kinski is a bankable name, and they kind of needed that for this movie. But another producer came forward and positioned another plan, which was have Klaus Kinski murdered so that they could claim the insurance money and then just make a profit on the movie. Schmoller reacted to this like it was a joke. Apparently, the Italian producer was not joking. He was planning to have Klaus Kinski murdered for being such an asshole.
I don't know if this says anything about the difference in American and Italian producers, but I really appreciate that the American producers are like, no, he makes money for us. Like, let's just work with him. Just try to make it work. And the Italian producers like, nah, fucking kill him.
No, yeah, we're gonna kill him. I don't care who this asshole is. Like, we are killing him. That's how much of a prick he was on set. Eventually Schmoller is just like, all right, let's just power through, get this done. It became like a battle of wills after a while, and he's just like, I want to finish this movie. But things were always very tense, and now we have to bring Charlie Band into the equation here because he writes about this incident in his autobiography, which we cite many times. Now, there was a day when the production on Crawlspace was ongoing. It was after hours, and the cast and crew were like relaxing in a bar. And Charles Band's assistant came running into his office and told him, you have to get down to the bar right now. Klaus Kinski is holding David Schmoller at knife point and threatening to kill him. He thought this was a joke or an exaggeration. This is actually what was happening. He gets down there. Klaus is in his cups, and he's already a little unstable to begin with. And he is holding Schmoller by the front of his shirt, and he is holding a kitchen knife and pointing it at him and threatening to kill him if he doesn't stop framing him in certain ways. So Band is able to talk this guy down.
Imagine being in Charlie's shoes during that.
Yeah,
right. Can you imagine? Like he said, he in his book, he said he's encountered situations like this before with his dad. His dad was a director of Italian like exploitation films back in the 50s. Yeah. He dealt with a lot of like big personalities. And so he learned from his dad how to kind of talk somebody down and like assuage their ego in a way that would keep them sane.
I thought you were implying that he dealt with a lot of people like having knife fights on set.
Right.
Look, Roman cinema back in the 50s was the Wild West, Yeah. But he was able to talk him down. They finished the movie. They got it all done. And I bring Charles Band up and David Schmoller at the same time because there is a coda to the whole crazy story of working with Klaus Kinski. And that is in 1989 when they are working on the designs for the original Puppet Master. And they designed their main character, probably the face of Full Moon, the most identifiable character in the entire Full Moon canon, a little puppet by the name of Blade. Okay. Blade has very distinctive white hair. He has very distinctive cheekbones and facial expressions, and he brandishes a knife everywhere he goes. If that sounds a little familiar, it is because the character of Blade was modeled after actor Klaus Kinski as a little in-joke between Band and Schmoller about the time the great German actor almost knifed him to death in a bar. So that is the lasting legacy of Crawlspace. Like, before we even talk about the movie, that's insane. This is one of the most insane production stories.
It is, and that's why I'm
history.
so glad to have the movie Dumpster Guys back again, because like when you guys were here for Demonic Toys 2, like, talk about a movie where you needed to pad for time.
Yes.
Oh yeah, big time, yeah.
We were spinning our wheels a bit on that one. Yeah.
This one is no shortage of things to talk about. And so like we talked a little bit about the Please Kill Mr. Kinski, but like, was this a movie for you guys that, Joe, I know you have a long history with Full Moon and Empire stuff. I know you've been a fan for a really long time. Was this one that you discovered early on, or was it one of those ones that was a name by reputation first? And then Sean, you can take the same question afterward. I know you are not as schooled in some of the Full Moon stuff as your partner there.
This came a little bit later for me because it really, even though it's an Empire Pictures joint, like, it really wasn't the bigger ones, like, for me personally, like Cellar Dweller or Reanimator or From Beyond, like the Gordon films or the Buechler films. So the first time I actually saw this was 2000 something.
Okay.
And it was at the Exhumed Films Empire Pictures Marathon that they did in Philly. And it was the first time I saw this. So I'm watching all these movies, and then Crawlspace comes on, and I was like, "Oh shit, Klaus Kinski!" I'd never really heard of this. So that was the first time I saw it, and I thought it was great. And you talked about the Nazi, subgenre being beat to death. I think this is one of the better movies that does this. And again, it's cool to see. Tourist Trap is amazing, but I think this is I love Puppet Master. Puppet Master's like my thing. You guys know I like Little Rubber Monsters and little puppet movies.
Of course.
And that kind of like solidified my love for that. Puppet Master is one of those main ones. But this is definitely Schmoller's second best film next to Tourist Trap, in my opinion, that he's done. And yeah, that's kind of the first time I saw it, and I was really kind of enamored by it because it's just so damn creepy. And I love how it's not just like a traditional like Nazi exploitation movie. There's a little bit more to it. There's, again, I love all the torture stuff and kind of like his kind of journey as a character, which I'm sure we'll talk about. It's just a great film. It's creepy as hell. I love it.
And that's a cool way to see it for the first time. Like, to
on the
be
big
part
screen.
of a festival on the big screen with no prior knowledge of it. It's like, because then it's like, I'll go to Sean also, like when he saw this for the first time, but like, I think this is one of those ones where like if you find out after the fact about this troubled production, it's like, it makes sense. Like this is one of those movies as like, I really like, but it does sort of scream of troubled production. Sean, this wasn't a first time watch for you, was it?
Yeah, about 3 hours ago, I went on YouTube and I Googled it, and I found a version on YouTube with Italian subtitles, and I watched it, and that was my first viewing.
There you go.
And the first time I heard about this movie was when you asked us to do the episode.
Hey, hell yeah.
So it was one of those.
No, we have usually like a 50-50 split of people who select episodes because it's a movie that's like important to them or exciting or some way, and then people who just like roll the dice and kind of see where they end up with. So I appreciate we've got kind of the 50-50 split here on this one episode, so I always like that. I always like going into a movie cold. This was my first watch too. I finished it this morning, and what a wild film this is. Like, apart from just the behind the scenes story of it all, this is a fascinating movie. It's a little rough around the edges, and a lot of that was because, as Schmoller said,
because it was made under duress.
It was made under duress. Klaus Kinski refused to say lines that he didn't like. So there are a lot of parts of this movie that just don't make sense because they don't have coverage of him saying the lines that would make things make sense.
He's mumbling a lot. Like, if you don't have those, like, I had those Italian subtitles, and I know enough like Spanish/Italian, I guess.
Yeah.
You're like, all right, I kind of know what he meant there, but he's like, you gotta like jack the volume up on some of that.
For sure. Yeah, it's a little mumbly and a little crazy, but this movie is throwing bizarre curveballs at you every few seconds. And I have to say, this is one of the very few movies that we covered on this show that actually kind of like scared me a little bit, or at least like kind of put me on my back foot, because it's going a lot harder than a lot of movies like this do, and it's very intense. A lot of that, I don't want to give too much credit to somebody who is actually a monster. You know, there are a lot of sexual assault abuses cases from him against lodged by his daughters, by his ex-wives. Like, he is not a good person, but he is Klaus Kinski is giving an unbelievable performance in this movie. I think it helps that you can see there is genuine madness behind those eyes. He does feel dangerous and unpredictable, and feels like this is not out of character for him in any way.
Because that's because he is. He's
fucking insane. Yeah, he's an actual madman. Yeah,
it's a separate the art from the artist kind of thing. I think he's a real asshole in real life, but he's dead now, so he's not making any money off.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
But his performances, I think even Schmoller even said like he was a real asshole, but he was a great actor.
Yeah, that was kind of the odd
performance
coda.
Is amazing.
Yeah,
the performance is great, and I genuinely feel like, to echo what Steve is saying, I think there's real kind of pathos to some of the people in this movie, because I think you watch it thinking like Klaus Kinski might actually kill them.
Yeah.
Like, and it might be by accident, or maybe, he'll purposefully change one of the props to be a real loaded gun or a real knife or something. Like, I think there's that threat in this movie. And like, it's hard. Like, the separating the art from the artist can be hard. You're right. He's been dead for over 30 years. He's not making any money off of this, but it's like, I still even feel weird complimenting his performances. I mean, and the performances he gives in this, Hagira, Nosferatu, like Fitzcarraldo, like really terrific performances. But like, man, it's one thing if you're
at what cost kind of thing,
right? Like, people are charged with being difficult all the time. As a matter of fact, somebody who worked on this movie had told David Schmoller, I forget, a production assistant or someone, worked on another movie with Klaus Kinski, and then told David Schmoller, oh, he's fine, don't worry about him. And so then all of that stuff happened, and he was basically like, I thought you said he was fine. And the guy's response was, oh, he's a little bit difficult, but if you want a real monster, that's Elizabeth Taylor.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, I don't know. That seems a little disingenuous, shall we say?
I don't think she's pulled a knife at anybody. Yeah.
Right. It's like, I get that there are people who are difficult. I get there's people that are method. You hear about, oh, this person's kind of an asshole to work with because they're not nice to staff, or they're always in character. The monstrosity of Klaus Kinski goes far beyond that. And it really went for me from being about like, oh yeah, he's kind of a mad genius, to being like, oh no, he is one of the worst people of all time. When you read about, the stuff that happened with his older daughter, and all those things, to which his younger daughter has, taken her side, and apparently both daughters didn't show up at his funeral either. And that's another thing too, because you look at his obituary, which is littered with insults. Like,
it's really telling. That's the moment when everyone is supposed to be finding the nicest things to say about you, to memorialize you. They could be saying that he's a great actor, and he is, but you need to add that coda that like he made every set he worked on a living hell. He was just absolutely hell-bent on making things as unpleasant as humanly possible. And that's a real psychosis, and it's a real problem, but it does make you a pretty convincing psychopath in a movie. I guess the basic plot, and there's also something that this movie is wrestling with that I was not expecting, and that is there's something really compelling here, which is you have this German actor who is playing the son of a Nazi war criminal who is like completely traumatized beyond all repair by the sins of the father, to the point where he's just kind of locked in this. So this is a weird movie about dealing with national legacy, about dealing with the shame of atrocity, about letting it infect your soul in a way. And like Kinski is playing the pathos of that in a way that I was absolutely not expecting. He's not a sympathetic character in any way. He is an absolute monster who is trapping people in his attic and setting booby traps all over his apartment complex. But he's wrestling with something that is very interesting and not something I was expecting them to cover.
Mm-hmm.
It's more complex than just he's the boogeyman, you know?
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
And I appreciate that.
No, it's absolutely complex. And, you know, for that theme to be in this movie, which is also sometimes very funny and very silly and very campy in some ways, and then they bring in some really heavy material. You know, it's a movie that kind of always kept me on edge.
Mm-hmm. Because you didn't know what was going to happen next, and like you said, I mean, in his performance, he's so damn unhinged. And if it's the first time you're watching it, you are kind of on the edge of your seat, like, what's going to happen next? What other trap is he going to pull out? Who's next? Kind of thing. You know?
You're looking for that remote to come out again.
Yeah, the remote. Oh my god! And just some of the set pieces that they set up, like without even being really explicit about it. The knife in the chair. We see him installing a retractable knife in a chair. We know where this is going. We know what that's going to do. We visualize it. We don't need to see it graphically to understand. Oh fuck, that is horrible. And just the tension of putting this guy on this booby trap chair with a secret button in it, and if he moves his hand in one particular place, oof. Yeah, well, brutal.
Now that you mention that, it's something else that I also appreciate about this movie. It's not, there's like no gore in it. It's not that kind of movie. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's not a slasher. It's more like it's a psychological thriller at its core. And I think that's what really makes it stand out especially among Empire and Full Moon stuff. Because there's always usually a monster, or, you know, when you think about Empire, you think about Reanimator, and you think about like over the top practical effects and monsters and heads getting cut off and all kinds of stuff like that. This is very like a more reined in, reserved, more for lack of a better term, mature film for the Empire repertoire, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah.
That was actually something I had a problem with this movie, actually.
Really?
Is that it didn't have any kills, honestly. There was like maybe 2 or 3. Because the intro has that kill. I don't know if we're going to talk about it or not, but that first kill, and it's like, oh, okay, this is what we're going to do. And then we really don't get that for the rest of the movie. And I do think it still works, but I was expecting a little bit more blood. Not that you need it. But there was a couple of those kills that, while I like the direction and the way it's edited together, like I like the flow of it, I was like, I kind of wanted to see how that guy's eyeballs got ripped out. That's the
interesting thing that Schmoller does in this movie, where like they build up a lot of tension leading up to a kill. They have all the slasher elements of like slowly creeping through. When's it going to happen? Then we get hard cut body part in a jar. That's
like
all we
see. It's really
what happened to this person, but they don't have eyes anymore. You know, they don't have fingers anymore.
Right.
I think that's pretty creepy, man. Especially like all the sequences of him like watching people in the apartments and things like that. Oh, by the way, we didn't mention it yet, so I just want to throw it out there. This is the same apartment complex from Troll, so I thought that was so funny.
Right? Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I was like, hey, that and what's her face? Lori lives in the Potter's apartment too, so I thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, Charlie Band is not about to let a perfectly good set go to waste after they have just.
I just kept thinking about Klaus, like, going around inside the air vents while Turok the Troll was turning Sonny Bono into a plant.
Well, obviously this takes place after that. You know, after then goes the shit at the end, the Troll, and they all leave. He bought the fucking complex, right?
Exactly. And then it gets bought by somebody else, and then the Potters move in. It's a whole thing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that. I also like the fact that like you could see Klaus Kinski like in the vents, like just watching Gary Shandy doing his like outdoor man thing that he's doing in that apartment that he's in and just kind of rolling his eyes like, what's this guy doing? The funny thing though is the character Jessica, who brings the older guy back to her apartment. That apartment was set dressed with leftover props from TerrorVision.
No,
and you can tell.
Art collectors? That's what I was thinking when I was looking at all the bad art on the wall.
Yep. No, same pieces and stuff from TerrorVision. Just
That's
Yeah.
so funny. It was the same year too, which is kind of funny.
Oh yeah, and Troll too was also the same year. So all of these are probably being
was,
filmed like right at the same time and just
Simultaneously,
sharing.
yeah,
Like,
that's
was
crazy.
it? I think it was TerrorVision and Troll. Like Beekler was kind of doing special effects on the set of one, and then he would go across the street to the lot and in the evening and direct Troll. So like he was
That's
pulling
crazy.
double duty at that time. Yeah, I'm sure they were swapping things around. I mean, there's an interesting kind of voyeuristic element to this movie where we're looking in at a lot of kind of strange and almost wacky characters that live in this house. You know, we have get a very like weirdly realistic and kind of graphic sex scene at the beginning, but also involves some weird like burglary play or something between this kind of like a consensual burglary situation. You know, and we have some interesting oddball characters here. There's like the kind of failed trophy girlfriend, you know, who keeps trying to snag like older rich men, and then, you know, the main character girl is just kind of a cipher. Like she's just kind of a nice girl that he decides not to murder, you know, because she's the final girl, you know.
Oh, and then we have the girl in a cage with her tongue ripped out, by the way.
Oh my God. Can't believe I forgot to mention that. Yeah, she is just an ever-present element in this movie, trapped in the doctor's lab. We don't see her get captured. We don't really get to learn anything about her. We just know that she has had her tongue cut out. She's trapped in this cage, and he is basically just using her to monologue to, which is so unsettling.
Who am I going to talk to? The rats? No, I talk to you, Martha.
Yeah, that's so upsetting. Like that he just keeps her alive just so he could like try and absolve him. Not even absolve himself. It seems like he's kind of trying to explain his behavior to this woman whose life he's destroyed. Yeah,
Well,
horrifying.
Just like the violation of privacy, and especially that, you know, you mentioned that kind of graphic opening sex scene. The dialogue between those two characters. Could you imagine somebody eavesdropping on you and your wife, or you and your partner, or somebody, and you saying those kinds of things, and how violating that is?
Yeah, it really is.
You know,
my biggest fear,
why this movie creeps me out.
My biggest fear in my life is that literally anyone will ever overhear anything I say ever.
Yeah. Which is a good trait for a podcaster.
I am 100% with you. I'm like, it's just the way, but that's a realistic element. I think is that I think about this a lot when people are in situations of duress in movies and things are handled in sort of like a suave, sexy nature, and it's like that's not lifelike. No. That's not the way things would be. Like I would meet an embarrassing demise probably. But like to piggyback a little bit on what Sean was saying before, I do think I like this movie a lot, but I do think it is sort of like, I don't want to use the word slapdash because that has a real negative connotation to it, but I do think it's a little bit hastily patched together again, because they were fighting to get this thing made in the first place with so many, sources of like, how do I even say this? Just hurdles and obstacles of things getting in the way of the movie being made. But the opening kill in the beginning of the girl who's wandering around the apartment, who gets the like knife or spear, whatever you want to call it, in her back, and the way she just hangs from it is super cool, the way that's staged and shot. And then there's that gratuitous sex scene, and I think it really sets up maybe 10 minutes into this movie like, this is going to be a very gratuitous movie, and then it's not. And then a lot of the events that happen after happen off screen. And so I do think that it sets you up a little bit for something it doesn't quite deliver on, but I also look at it as kind of a patchwork because it was so difficult for them to get this thing made in the first place. So it's not cohesive feeling to me, but the chaos of it is perfectly in sync with the way that the production went. I almost like I wouldn't want this movie to have been made any other way, even though I recognize the flaws that are in it. And I think when Sean was saying that too, it's like it does kind of set you up for that. But no, there's not a ton of blood, but it's definitely the creep factor. And I like the fact that David Schmoller gets to call Klaus Kinski a creep.
Yeah.
from
Oh,
behind
he
the
gave
door.
a cameo. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, gave himself a little moment there. That must have been cathartic at least.
Well, they were not on camera together. So
Oh, yeah.
Klaus Kinski did not know who he was reacting to in that scene. It was probably a PA or someone reading against him, and then it was shot reverse with David Schmoller. I can only imagine had they attempted that scene, like, what kind of fight that would have led to.
The knife would have come out.
Yeah.
Mid take.
Yeah.
What did you say? The switchblade.
Yeah.
You think Klaus was like walking around set with the knife and the Newton's crater ball, just like hitting it the whole
Yeah.
time?
Oh my god.
Yeah, probably.
What was that in the movie when he kept doing that? When he's like in the crawl space, quote unquote.
It's almost like his Jaws music, really, in the film.
Kinda.
A little bit,
It's just
yeah.
announcing himself.
It's
Oh,
like
yeah,
this
kind of-
very simplistic, repetitive tone. Like there's a good moment where we see like he's got a Newton's cradle set up on top of like a pit full of rats, and it's clear that the repetitive clacking sound is driving them insane. So it's meant to be like this constant droning, like ever-present thing, and it's a cool mechanic to use.
And you
Especially
mentioned
when the chicks in her. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, and you mentioned the rats. Like, I was surprised how much of an element of the film that was, like using that as an attack weapon, basically a pack of rats, but also like just telling the tenants, like, it's just rats. Don't worry about. I'm taking care of it. Meanwhile, there's this fucking guy in your walls skating around.
That's a crazy number of rats. Yeah.
It's also the parallel to the people in the building are the rats. He's antagonizing them and kind of playing with them, and then eventually killing them, which is pretty cool too.
Yeah.
There's a moment.
The story works together.
There's a moment where the people don't really act like people would act, and that is when he lets the first rat through a little trap door into the one girl's apartment. Listen, I live in New York City. There are 10 times as many rats as there are people in this city. I have never seen one inside an apartment. And if I did, usually they scurry around yards, courtyards, like little side streets, things like that. But there's normally they don't really have a way. If one is in your building, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Unless an outdoor cat brought it inside or something like that.
Yeah.
But this rat comes in. The two girls start screaming like a normal person does.
Sure.
And then Talia Balsam just kind of looks at it and laughs and almost puts her hand out like she wants to stroke the bottom of the rat's face. Yeah. And I was like, that's a rat. Like that thing that's got diseases. It's filthy. Like you don't want to, be like petting it like you're sitting at your friend's house and they let their kitten that's been locked in the other room out for a few minutes. Like it's just such an odd way that they act. And it was a moment where I didn't really know if that was going to be written into her character more, like if there was going to be a reason why her kind of humanity towards creatures was greater than the people around her. I mean, she's not given a ton to do. I do think that Talia Balsam's pretty good in the movie. Yeah, she's the daughter of Joyce Van Patten and Martin Balsam. And
she's also in the Kindred.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was just looking her up. Her first husband from 1989 to 1993 was George Clooney. Her second husband from 1998 to present is John Slattery from Mad Men.
No way.
And she's related to all the Van Pattens, and she's like, I had no idea. Yeah.
And she played John Slattery's wife on Mad Men as well.
That's right. She did. Oh, yeah. Okay. That's right. Yeah. Mona Pike. Yeah, that's right.
Damn Nepo babies.
Jerry, do you think that she reacts that way because they briefly touch on it and there's little cues of visual storytelling, but she's a journalist. But it seems like she's a war journalist because of the stuff that she's covering. If you look in that one picture when she's sleeping on her desk, there's like it looks like a refugee or somebody being held at gunpoint or something. I mean, do you think she's just like she's seen so much shit like overseas that the rat was no big deal for her?
Yeah, I think that's probably what they're trying to convey there. Yeah. I just saw it and I said absolutely not.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree. But maybe like gives her the bones to do what she does later, I guess.
Yeah, I could see that.
Well, because then she's the one who's got to then, scurry through the crawl space, right. and when she is that the moment when he releases the little hatch and he's on like, I don't even know what you would call it, the like metal boogie board.
Yeah, that's like
Yeah.
something they
Oh,
use
man.
like to work on cars.
Dude, that's a real Mario moment, dude. He's going down the Goomba, air duct with
Yeah.
a Goomba mattress.
Yeah,
But he
yeah.
does release all those rats like Willard or some shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, very Willardy. I love the scenes towards the end where they're all crawling through the vents because it's clear that they've got like rolly wheels under them. They're moving very effortlessly. You see, like Klaus Kinski, like if you've ever tried to drag yourself on your belly, it's like it's effort. It's a lot of work, and these guys are just cruising. They're like
Well-
they're like the turtle on the skateboard. They're having a great
Yes.
time.
I got some comments about those vents, honestly, because it's like this guy's in there constantly and he's never dirty. So I don't know if he's in there with Clorox wipes or fucking butter, but he's greasing that thing down.
Oh, he's definitely cleaning it up, dude. He keeps it neat.
He's got the
I
spray
can't
bottle
believe
in
it's
there.
not butter. I'm going to spray it on my whole body and roll around in the vents.
a very clean apartment complex here.
I was gonna
They are
say,
insanely clean vents.
they
I
are
will give
clean,
them
and
that.
I can imagine him like eating in the vent too. Just like,
Yeah.
he's got his little switchblade out. He's like cutting an apple slices and eating them while he's watching someone through the vent.
Well,
through the grate.
He's definitely snacking while he's watching, for sure.
He's sitting there with a coin flipping it, deciding if he's going to get the remote out and kill the tenant or not. He's like, if it's meant to be. Like, we didn't even talk about that, but every time he kills somebody, he basically takes a bullet and he puts blood on it and he puts it in a revolver and does kind of a Russian roulette with it.
Yeah.
That's a really
love
interesting
this story,
aspect of this to me. Yeah.
And I guess the
Like-
idea being that because out of the 6 shots or whatever it is, it didn't kill him, so God must be allowing him to live to continue his work of killing people or something like that.
Yeah.
For every life he takes, he puts the bullet in the gun and then puts it to his own head and pulls the trigger. And he's like, let it. Well, what's the word? What's the thing he always says?
So be it.
So be it. Excuse
So
me.
be it.
Oh, be
Yeah.
it. Right.
I believe the words
Like,
you're looking
he's gonna.
for.
I guess I'm supposed to keep on killing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Make it so, number one.
But we also get a lot of scenes too, like to kind of dive into his psychosis, where when he's talking to Martha a lot of the time, but he's also doing those diary entries where you kind of find out that he's been at this since he's been the Hitler Youth. I'm like, I read my father's diaries and I didn't understand them, but by the end of the film, like he's realized, I understand what my father meant. He was addicted to killing, and now so am I.
Right. Yeah. And that's why like his main antagonist for much of the movie is this character Steiner, who is kind of like a modern day extension of like Operation Paperclip. He's like, he's the descendant of people who were killed by Nazis, and he believes that this doctor killed his brother a few years ago because he's recreating these Nazi experiments. So he's this like very dogged, like kind of nerdy guy who is not afraid to confront him on his shit. I thought he was a cool character. And he gets the hot seat, shall we say?
Yeah.
He got a little something he can't take off.
Yeah, he got it in the end. Let's say.
Well, and
yeah,
he's reading the diary entry that he just wrote, where he's finally like, I feel like a god because I used to give life and now I take it away, and to have that power is the only thing that makes me feel alive.
I do have to throw out, this is going to mean nothing to anybody because it was an Instagram story I posted at this point weeks ago. But when I was watching this movie, it was on Pluto TV and they have ads, and they kept the subtitles going. Like, how sometimes the subtitles will lock in place as the ads play. So I took a screenshot of a Ruggable ad with the subtitle over it, Ruggable, when you can take life away as easily as you can give it. I'm like, whoo, boy. All right. They're going intense with that.
But this monologuing is pretty great.
Yeah, it's a smart way for them to do the storytelling as well. And like we find out that like he accidentally killed somebody and was like, hey, you know what? I don't feel remorse. Actually, I kind of loved it. The exhilaration of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's like his kink, his dopamine hit.
Yeah,
and
like
again, going back to the very beginning, like it's so interesting that they start the movie the way they do, where we're not watching a good man slowly unravel. We are in the middle of the shit. We are towards the end of his unraveling. We have gotten to the point where he has made an H.H. Holmes house, and he is like putting this woman who we never learn anything about through the ringer. So it kind of starts like at 60 and just kind of keeps going from there. So it's, I don't know, really, I don't know, just a fascinating movie, like really admirably icky and
well, I love the
audacious.
Russian roulette aspect of it, and I also love it watching it in hindsight now, having all of this information about the production and the behind the scenes stuff, where like in addition to himself being a loose cannon, Kinski also became more and more paranoid that the more he annoyed the crew of the movie, the more they were going to revolt against him, to the point where when he was shooting those Russian roulette scenes with the gun, when he was doing actual takes, part of him, he admits later on, thought that there was a chance that someone would have put live ammo in that gun to actually kill him. So every time there's a close up of his eyes with the gun, he is actually thinking like there might be a real live bullet in here. And I think like all of that stuff just is the perfect recipe for this weird viewing experience. Like it's in that way unlike a lot of other movies. And I find that, you know, sometimes you watch movies in the behind the scenes, it's like, oh, it's interesting how they decided to shoot this that way. That's cool. Like the way they decided they were going to frame this way or block this shot this way. But there's so much more to it than that informs the viewing experience. And like it's such a amazing portrayal of someone just completely in the grips of madness. And again, it's like I don't want to compliment the acting because I don't know how much acting is happening.
Well, coming back to the separating the art from the artist comment, that's what makes this film kind of this weird, fascinating time capsule, because like something like this wouldn't happen again. The conditions of this movie and the conditions of Klaus and how he was reacting, that shit would be shut the fuck down, and that would be it. He would like go to jail or some shit. So like you were saying, like the fact that we even have this is kind of this weird anomaly of yesteryear. You know what I mean?
No, totally. It is a relic in that sense. It's sort of something that captures the true guerrilla filmmaking and bonkers approach to Empire and Charles Band in general, maybe more so than anything we've covered.
Yeah.
One thing we didn't mention about the movie that I want to give it some props for is, like I was saying before and agreeing with Sean, that it's not particularly gory, although there is some pretty horrific stuff and creepy things.
Mm-hmm.
There are a couple of amazingly staged bodies. Like the girl at the with her hands bolted into the piano and the vice on her mouth and chin is such an amazing image.
Well, and they tease all that stuff in earlier scenes when he's kind of in his lab working on different devices. Like he has that kind of shit attached to a mannequin, and even like the big fake out at the end when he pretends to get killed. Like you could see him in an earlier scene strapping that to his chest, like testing it out.
Yeah.
Which I thought was kind of cool, actually.
Oh, yeah.
I was wondering for a second while I was watching the movie, once we started to realize that you saw him putting some of these things he created to use, I was wondering when the fake spike through the chest was going to happen. And so much time passed from when that Chekhov spike was introduced in the beginning to when the fake out happens that I actually forgot. And I had a moment where I went, oh, his death can't be off screen. We can't hear like a Wilhelm scream and a piece of metal sliding and then look at him. I'm like, that's not an area where this wouldn't be off screen. They wouldn't cut away from this. And then I remembered, but before the reveal happened, I remembered, oh no, he's got the fake one on. I remember you making that before. Yeah. And I love that it went there.
I will say the one trap I feel like was totally unnecessary. I didn't even know why this was in the movie. Was the one one cuts a banana in half with and then randomly decides, I guess my cat needs to die. And then he just pulls the tail out of it. And
that poor thing.
Cat dead. Details later.
Poor kitty. Yeah.
I mean, okay, sure. There's our gore, guys. That the cat got killed. Thanks. Just what I wanted, I guess.
Well, that's an upsetting thing in a movie for me. So,
that's my bad joke.
Oh man. Well, do we have any final thoughts on Crawlspace here? I feel like we've creeped through the entire length of this particular movie.
It's just super creepy. And again, like we've talked about this whole episode, it's just kind of this weird badge on the Empire, coat, if you will.
Yeah.
Again, despite all the horrible shit that Klaus has done, or how horrible the production was, somehow they were able to cobble it together in a creepy good movie.
Yeah.
And I again, like I said earlier, I appreciate this film because of how much of a departure it is for the normal fare that we usually get from Empire or even Full Moon. And it's kind of one of those drama forward films that I think just worked really well for them. And I'm not entirely sure why it wasn't a bigger movie for them.
Yeah. Rotten Tomatoes has it
a lot of people know about it.
Yeah, Rotten Tomatoes has it at like 17%. Like critics dismissed it when it came out. And look, it is obviously, like I think Sean used the word patchwork. Like it is very patchwork in a lot of ways because by necessity. They had a low budget and a short shooting schedule and a crazy person who is sabotaging the movie at every turn. So there are some necessary fringes on the edge of this movie. But it's trying something really audacious. It's trying something really bold and weird. And it does have some pretty upsetting and shocking and frightening stuff. And a lot of that is due to the lead performance here.
Yeah, Joe, you said departure. Departure was the perfect word for it. Like it's when you look at Empire's output at this, it was a lot of tiny terrors, rubber monsters, and stuff like that. And this is definitely more psychological and very, very different. And you mentioned the Rotten Tomato score, incredibly low.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was just, I don't know, maybe, and this happens a lot of times where like production word of mouth can ruin people's opinion of a movie even before the movie really comes out. And so maybe this just happened. Maybe the timing was bad. It was just like, oh, it's another low budget Empire movie, but they're trying this now. I don't really know if they succeeded. It's a little messy. It's a little frayed, but I think it's definitely a departure that I can appreciate and getting behind. I think I like this one quite a bit. And Joe, like Steve had told us that he enjoyed it, having watched it the first time. Joe saw it probably the best way I can imagine someone seeing it for the first time. Sean, your experience probably a little different. I was thinking when you were talking about watching it in Italian subtitles, that means there was a moment where Klaus Kinski was talking in English, writing in German, and then you had to read Italian over the German.
Well, so what it was actually, just to clarify, it was all in English. It was just they also had Italian subtitles at the bottom. So occasionally I'm like, what is he saying? Because he just was mumbling so much. But you do make a great point there, actually.
I was like, it's like the Hans Landa at the premiere scene in Inglourious Bastards, where
very
he's
much
just
so.
switching languages. But what did you think of it this first time?
I didn't really like it that much, honestly.
Okay.
I actually like the camera direction in this film a lot, and the actual art direction I really appreciate, especially those scenes where he does have the gun to his head. They have this kind of like very stark black and white checkerboard floor that they're always kind of panning up and down from, and I really actually like that shot a lot.
Yeah, it reminded me of Peter Manoogian's some of the dream stuff in Demonic Toys in the first one.
Yeah.
There was kind of, I don't know if it's maybe the way it was kind of shot from above. There was kind of a dreamlike quality to it, but I think
the crane and the motion of the camera.
That reminded me of that. But you know what, Sean, I'm actually glad to hear you say that, because it's nice when we get some differing opinions here, and we're always very agreeable. And I like now that we have three of us kind of come down on like really, really thinking that this is a solid entry in Empire, and you're kind of like, slow down.
I would still say check it out. Like, I'm not saying like don't watch it. On Movie Dumpster, we have our rating scale. Is it on the shelf? Like, do you want to watch this again, or is it in the dumpster? Which, sometimes means don't ever watch it again, but sometimes it just means it's in the dumpster. We still love it, but it's not great. And I think it's one of those for me where it's a little further down the dumpster. But if someone was like, hey, Klaus Kinski, have you ever seen this fucking movie? He's crawling around like John McClane in a apartment building killing people. any interest, I'd say, you know what, it wasn't for me, but you should watch it. Like, it's one of those like I would always recommend without a doubt. But I definitely prefer stuff like Troll or TerrorVision for sure. I don't know, just didn't land entirely for me, and I maybe it was just a little too mean for me, which sometimes that works for me, sometimes it doesn't, and that's not to take anything away from anything else in the film, but some of it I was just like, God damn, like that woman chained up in the attic. I was like, wow, we're really doing this, huh? And obviously it's to sell how evil this guy is. It's very effective at that. As I'm saying all that, I don't know. Maybe I'll revisit it and change my mind down the road, but this one just didn't hit the mark for me this time.
That's fair. But we appreciate you taking the spin and giving this one a shot, because we had a great time talking to you guys about this movie. You're two of the best in the biz. Where can people find Movie Dumpster, all of your great stuff that you guys are doing?
First of all, thank you guys so much for the compliment, and thanks again for having us. I mean, we always like hanging out with you guys.
Oh, we love having you on. Absolutely.
Yeah. You can find us on YouTube. You can at Movie Dumpster on all your social media platforms. You can listen to us on any podcast app of your choice. And yeah, we're right in the throes of October at this point. So we got Trick or Trash coming up on you. Either we already have some episodes coming out, or they are out already. So definitely check out the channel and your podcast apps for that. And yeah, MovieDumpsterPodcast.com. If you want to check out anything else, we've got a store and all kinds of good stuff.
We are also on Patreon. Let's not forget all the plugs.
Yes, this is correct.
Patreon.com/Movie Dumpster, where we also have some bonus content if that piques your interest, where you can get yourself some stickers, a t-shirt. We also have watch-alongs where you watch a movie with the Dumpster Dwellers, which is our fans that we lovingly love to refer to as. And we have stuff like commentary tracks and little mini-sodes every once in a while. So check that out if you're interested in more content, if you check our podcast out. And I guess, yeah, that's pretty much it. Check us out.
Yeah, and I really love that your stuff, that you hit a bunch of different areas, because it's like you do your normal movie reviews, you have some other like smaller content, you have your talks from the dark side stuff with Chris Barr, who is on the show recently. Listeners will have heard him do Shadow Zone recently, a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, super fun conversation there. And also, I just want to say, for anybody who's listening now who has found our show in the more recent past, we did an episode with the fellas from Movie Dumpster on the movie Ragdoll, Ted Nicolau's Ragdoll, which is available still, I believe, on their main feed and on their YouTube channel. So if you were wondering if we were ever going to end up covering Ragdoll, we already did. We will not be covering it on our show proper. So you can head to Movie Dumpster's YouTube channel or find their podcast on any podcast listening app and search for Ragdoll, and you can hear our amazing conversation that we had about that movie, which was a really fun, nice surprise. And so definitely check that one out. I think if you like it, if you like our other shows, you'll like that one. And if you are a person who likes the content that we put out there weekly for you, then jump on to Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever you listen. Drop us a 5-star rating, maybe a little review if you have the time and feel like doing it. If you want to keep up with the show and see what we're doing, you can follow the show proper on Instagram at puppetmasters_castlefreaks. You can follow me at _Giallo_Jerry or Steve at Minotaur Matador. We do post the show on YouTube. I do promote it on Twitter or X, possibly Threads and Blue Sky again in the future. I've kind of laid off of that, but we'll see what happens in the upcoming months. But we're not the only show that Steve would like to take this opportunity to plug. So, Steve, what else have you been cooking?
Well, I've also been working on the show Cinema Arcade, which is cinema and arcade mashed together, because that is what we do. We're watching movies and playing the video games based on those movies to see how they contrast and compare and what kind of fun can be had with them. Not sure exactly where we're going to be, but no, I do know where we're going to be. It's going to be the beginning of October when this is coming out. So we are doing all horror movies this month. Expect some things like John Carpenter's The Thing, Killer Clowns from Outer Space, a couple others I might mix and match in there. I have a lot of horror movies.
You, Steve, as someone who doesn't know a lot about video games, on what system did a Killer Clowns game come out on?
That came out this year. It's brand new.
Oh, wow.
It's out on Steam right now. And I think it's kind of I haven't played it at all, but I think it's kind of similar to the Puppet Master game that you appeared on last year, where it's just sort of free to play online matchmaking stuff. You know, there's been a lot of those with horror games lately. There's an Evil Dead game, Texas Chainsaw, Friday the 13th, where it's like co-op or like asymmetrical fighting, where like one person is the killer and the other three are trying to survive. You know, so that's a popular subgenre right now. I think this falls into that, but we'll find out. And we'll also find out about our episode next week, which is going to be a lot of fun and a little bit maybe of a stretch for the premise of our show, but we're the adjudicators of that, and we'll allow it. We're going to be talking about the movie Freeway and its sequel, Freeway 2, Confessions of a Trick Baby. Now, of those two movies, only the second one is technically a Full Moon film. It was a pickup by by Kushner Lock in the late 90s. They distributed it through the Full Moon label. And the first Freeway does not really have anything to do with it. But we're adding that because that movie rules and everybody should check it out. And I think they make a really fun kind of duo of movies. We recorded that episode yesterday with friend of the show, Nathan Rabin. That's going to be a lot of fun to listen to. So definitely check that out next week. Freeway and Freeway 2, Confessions of a Trick Baby.
Yes. We're always talking about trick babies on the show. It just always happens.
Should we change the name to Puppet Masters and Trick Babies?
I think we might. I think that's a conversation we should have off mic. Anyway, to Joe and Sean of Movie Dumpster, thank you guys again, and we will see you guys next time.